much, William Bain. Now we come to questions. I think it would be logical if we start with Darfur and then do the north-south issues second. So has anybody got something to ask on Darfur to start with, either here or in the panel, online? And please give your identification if it's relevant.
Thank you. I'm Tom Law and I work for Sudan Tribune. Regarding the Darfur agreement, I believe Mr. Sisi in Parliament this week mentioned that the Finance Ministry in Sudan had not provided the money to establish the Darfur Development Bank, which was supposed to oversee development issues and receive money from Qatar and other countries. And he mentioned that this could eventually, if the money wasn't provided, see the deal fall apart. Is there any updates on where this money is coming from, and how likely does he think that the deal could fall apart if the money isn't provided and if the deal isn't implemented in the same way that the previous deal with Mini Manawi fell apart?
Is there anybody else on Darfur? Because we might do it all in a group of 2 or 3 questions. Yes, please.
Suzanne Jaspers, Bristol University. I just wanted to, Sarah already mentioned the land issue in relation to returns in Darfur, which again I think is very, very important. But I think there's also some, reports or views which say that a large number of displaced people will actually stay in the urban centres. So I was just wondering if the people in Khartoum can comment. I mean, is there a plan for people who are likely to stay within the large kind of urban centres in Darfur?
Okay, well, could Dr. Tijani answer those 2 questions, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think there was an earlier question from Sarah on this issue of occupation of the land. As you know, Sarah, we have a land commission, which is now based in Niala. It's going to be based in Niala in southern Darfur, and the land commission is taking care of that. But above all, as you also know, the DDPD, the peace agreement, has provided that the government of Sudan, the GOS, is responsible to end the occupation of land by the newcomers. In this respect, we will be coordinating our efforts with the central government, as well as the state governments, as well as the local community. It is a challenge, as we have just said, but we have to work in 2 fronts. One, cooperation with the central state governments in implementing the laws to end the occupation of the land, and at the same time also we will be working with the community to persuade those newcomers who came from elsewhere within the region to vacate the land that they have occupied. And I think I can see that the polarization in Darfur that has taken place over the last 10 years has receded a lot, and this gives an opportunity for us to actually use the community leaders in order to help in this particular respect. There is a question from Sudan Tribune on the issue of the Darfur Development Bank. I think that is not what I said. The Darfur Development Bank is a bank that is established to undertake the reconstruction and development of Darfur through the use of the funds pledged by the Emir of Qatar, which is $2 billion. So what I have actually said in the parliament is that we need actually to finish the procedures for establishing the Darfur Development Bank so that the state of Qatar could be in a position to channel those funds for the reconstruction and development of Darfur. How likely could the deal fall apart if there are no financial resources? Of course. I mean, the entire peace agreement depends on availability of resources. We cannot implement the peace agreement without having resources. If there are no resources, then that simply means there is no peace agreement. That's why I believe there has to be resources. Resources should be made available for the DRA to continue implementing the provisions of the agreement. As far as the plan for, well, we all know that the entire population of the IDPs are not going to return back to their areas of origin. A number of them will continue to stay in the urban areas. And for those who are going to stay in the urban areas, we already had discussions within the DRA. We already had some agreements with the state governments that those people who prefer to stay in the urban areas, they should also be provided with services, including health, water, and education, and the camps, the IDP camps, should be properly planned. And the governors, the Walis, have agreed actually to give anybody else, so any family who prefer to stay in the urban areas, they will be granted a piece of land to build their own house. And of course, we will provide them with the necessary services that they need. The early recovery efforts will not only be in the areas of return, the original areas of return, but it will as well be in those areas within or in the urban areas where IDPs prefer to stay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any more questions dealing with Darfur specifically? Yes, please. You just wait till you get the mic, please.
Richard King, Concordis International. I just wanted to ask what about the process for trying to bring the non-signatory movements into the DDPD, and whether Dr. Cisse has a view about how that can be achieved.
No other questions on Darfur before we ask? Okay, could you answer that question, please? How do you bring the non-signatories in?
There is no doubt that it's not only us, but the Regional International Committee has exerted substantial efforts to persuade the non-signatories to accede to the agreement. UNAMID, the mediators, have done so. Prime Minister Al Mahmoud, JSR Gambari, the head of UNAMID, as other countries within the region have done so to persuade them to come along. We had some contacts with them. We met in Washington during that workshop was organized in November. We had some very good discussions. But unfortunately, there was only one movement that has provided some signals of actually considering any kind of discussions to accede to the agreement. Others have decided not to. But we believe that as a movement, as DRA, as the people of Darfur, we believe that there is no way for this violence to end in Darfur without actually them coming along. If they decided to continue the war, that will not be in the interest of the people of Darfur. And we know that a substantial number of the people in Darfur, they don't want the other movements to continue the war. Therefore, we established some contacts, but unfortunately, those contacts and our aspirations to persuade our other brothers to come along, they have all faded out. In the wake of the invasion of Hijli. We know some of them have participated in that, and I think somehow it was a misjudgment or miscalculation, I don't know. They found themselves contributing in the occupation of a northern territory, and that was a colossal, I think it's a colossal mistake, and we still believe, as I said in the parliament, that they should reconsider their position, and they should go to Doha and try to accede to the agreement.
Thank you. We have one question that's come in on Twitter, so we'll just deal with that, if we may, and then move on to the North-South issue. Although this is beginning to move already, this question. It asks Dr. Tijani El-Sisi to give his opinion on the security situation on the Darfur-South Sudan border.
Or the security situation on the border is now, I mean, there are no incidences apart from the recent incursion last week by some of the forces of Minminawi who went all along from southern Sudan. They went all the way to and attacked a remote village at the border with Central African Republic, Umdafok. And as you may have heard, a lot of houses have been torched, innocent civilians have been killed. That was the only incident that took place over there. Apart from that, we believe that we think, and this is also witnessed by UNAMID, other UN organization, that the security in Darfur is improving, and we are working to build on this. It is improving because, as I said, people are now, they do believe that they should work together in order to have sustainable security and sustainable peace in the region.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Let's now move on to the North-South issue, and perhaps we could begin with Ambassador Wal Ariek, who is the representative of South Sudan here in London, just to give your brief responses to some of the things said by the two Sudanese government representatives.
Thank you, Jonathan, for this opportunity. I would also thank the organizers of this panel. My question or my comment would be that the government of South Sudan appreciate the call for cessation of hostility. We have been in agreement to sign a peaceful resolution of disputes until when Khartoum left Addis, where we were almost signing an agreement on some of the issues that are outstanding. That's one point. The second point, which is very important, is that we call upon the international community, the UN, the Security Council, the AU, that they should not give Khartoum the license to kill the civil population of South Sudan by aerial bombardment, as they have done previously. That it was an encouragement to Khartoum and a license to Khartoum to wage a war on people of South Sudan. The third point I would like to make is that our forces have withdrawn from Pantho, which is actually the land of South Sudan. And I think that has to be made clear, that Pantho, there's no evidence to say Pantho is North Pantho is an area of Dinka Ruweng or Pariang County of Unity State. That has been made clear. However, we will not claim Pantho by force. We are open for to resolve this dispute by peaceful means. And like other borders issues, we also request the international community to prevail upon Khartoum in order to withdraw from all the territories of South Sudan. That includes Ofra Nihas and others, and including ABA, because North is actually occupying ABA. We don't have forces in ABA. The final one is that South Sudan, as people and government, have a right to self-defense. And if Khartoum continue to bombard our civil population, as they have been doing, which country on earth can be bombed 60 times as we speak and as yesterday and so forth, and you cannot retaliate? One Khartoum killed 2 million of our people. The international community do not condemn Khartoum. And when we are bombed, no one speaks. It is good now, Sudan Tribune have shown the pictures of the attack on the market where the civil population, some were killed, and there were evidence on that. So Khartoum cannot deny that anymore, that they are not bombing our population. As I said, we have withdrawn from Pantho. Our government is willing and ready to go back to Addis. We have been in Addis, we were left there in order to move things forward. Peace is better than war as we know it. And so our appeal to the international community and also to Khartoum is to see that these issues can be resolved peacefully. And thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a question here also in the front row.
Well, thank you, ODI, for the chance to ask questions of Khartoum. Baroness Cox from your party parliamentary group on Sudan and South Sudan just returned last week from visiting Agok, Yida, Renk and Doro, and met there, of course, many of the people who've had to flee from the Nuba Mountains and from Blue Nile because of your aerial bombardment of civilians. So I would just like to know how you justify aerial bombardment of civilians in southern Kordofan and Blue Nile with Antonovs, with helicopter gunships, with MiGs and with long-range shelling, which of course has forced so many people to flee into South Sudan. And secondly, the asymmetric withdrawal of forces already referred to by the ambassador here. I was in Agok, and many of the people from Abyei cannot return to Abyei because SAF forces still occupy Abyei, although the SPA forces have withdrawn. So finally, the bombing across the border in Bentiu, I spent 2 nights in Bentiu. It is not a military target, and the bombing of the market in Bentiu, again, is something that would be very good to hear a justification from Khartoum of aerial bombardment and of asymmetrical refusal to withdraw forces in line with international requests.
Okay, very tough questions. Your answer, please, Dr. Mutif.
Thank you so much. As I have said with regard to the humanitarian situation, we recognize the plight of our people in southern Kordofan and those in Blue Nile too, and we are considering all the initiatives that we do to the of our citizens in these 2 areas who are in need, regardless where they are. This is the intention of our government, and we are acting along that line with the reservations that we don't want to entrench the rebellion into that areas, and we want to isolate the civilians from those who are carrying arms into that 2 areas. One of the, Mr. William, he talked about 700,000 southerners in northern Sudan who are stateless. Why they are stateless? Whose responsibility is that? I think the responsibility lies on the government of Southern Sudan to give them IDs and to give them the nationality, since they are Southern Sudanese. If they are recognized Southern Sudanese, they have to be Southern Sudanese. So the blame is not on the side of the government of Sudan. It is the blame for the government of Sudan to issue documents for those people, and we are ready to apply what we have agreed to or initial in Addis Ababa. But they are not having definitely full citizen rights. They are aliens since they are Southerners, and they cannot claim the same status as it used to be prior to the separation of Southern Sudan. We are working on the issue of Abyei. Abyei, as you know, we had an agreement that had been signed by the 2 presidents that called for the formation of the administration, the AJOC, the Abyei Administration Committee, and the Assembly. Who is calling that one? The SPLA actually is creating a veto on those who are nominated by the government of Sudan to represent them in the Abyei administration and as the chair for the Abyei Assembly. This is what is stalling the full implementation of the Abyei agreement that will lead to the next step. Yes, the UNISPA has been deployed in a satisfactory manner, but the deployment of South Sudan forces from Abyei south to Bahr al-Arab is not yet completed. The same applies for the south on the side of northern part of Bahr al-Arab. It is not the Sudanese armed forces who did not withdraw. It is both the forces of the south and the north. And you can refer to the UNISPA there. They will tell you And it is not true that the lady said that Southern Sudan had withdrawn, but Northern Sudan has not withdrawn. No, it is not true. Both forces have not withdrawn. Once we complete the formation of the administration and the assembly of Abyei, then at that time we should be asked whether we withdraw or not. But until then, because issues are linked with each other. I would just want to tell Mr. William Payne that we really appreciate the support that is rendered by the UK and the European Union and the international community at large. But it's short of the ambition and it's short of what is required. We are in crisis. Sudan is in financial crisis. It cannot fulfill its basic requirements in Sudan, leave alone the prosperity of the people or the welfare of the people. So here we need the support to be in considerable manner and to be void of conditionalities that will render it useless. Because many of the support that is given is loaded with conditionalities that actually make it sometimes difficult to be implemented for the funds or for the governments that are issuing or pledging that sort of support. I just want to tell my colleague from Southern Sudan that the non-aggression agreement had been signed in 10th of February between the two parties. It is already signed in 10th of February in Addis Ababa. But the South had attacked Sudan twice. The first time they have attacked Hijli through the when Salva declared this invasion when the Liberation Council was convening. This is the first time. And the last time, they did it again under the eyes of the whole world. And he cannot claim that whether he give it Bansu or whatever name, this means that it is part of Southern Sudan. No, it is part of Sudan. And the Hague ruling, very clear. The South claimed the area as part of been annexed to the north in 2005. Now they are coming and bringing a new argument that this is part of Deng Kerweng and annexed to north in 1970s by Nimeri's regime. This is ridiculous. And we are having a signed document about the disputed areas, not among them the area of Hijli. So this is a new claim. And all the regional organizations, even your allies, they told you you had done wrong and you have to withdraw. You are telling us now that this Pansu or whatever name you give it is part of the South. This is very ridiculous. And this is non-starter. Okay? So you have to correct your mission as ambassador and to go for documents that have been signed by the two parties and to go for the ruling of the PCA. We are not killing Southerners. We are harboring hundreds of Southerners, even during this aggression time. We are actually giving them extra care. We are having more than 30,000 in the universities in Sudan, from Southern Sudan. Southern Sudanese are working even here in this embassy and the debate. When we come through the gate, there are many Southern Sudanese who are working here. Their rights are protected. Not like the North Sudanese who are now under suppression. They are applying very high fees like a ransom on North Sudanese in the south. They catch them in the streets. They tell them that you are here illegally and you have to pay $100 for each person. We are not applying that. we are respecting our commitments. And we know that our problem is not with the normal Southern Sudanese. Our problem is with those who think that they can change the regime in the north. This is our problem. Our problem is those who make the wrong choices, like shutting the oil, like attacking his league, like doing so and so, like punishing Northern Sudanese who are now living in Southern Sudan. The number of Northern Sudanese in the south is not compared to the number of Southern Sudanese who are in the north. So you have to reciprocate the principles. During the war, it is justified. If we are attacking or fleeing force, it is justified to use your right to deter the aggressors, even if you bombarded these forces or attacking forces. We don't deny during the wartime. But now, since we have cleared Higli from the invasion, we are not applying any force on Southern Sudanese installations or territories. So this is what I want to say as a gentleman, and thank you again.
Well, can I just press you, thank you very much for those very frank answers, but can I just press you on this issue of aerial bombardment, which has been mentioned, I think, by UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon critically. Are you denying that there has been any bombardment which has killed civilians in the last few weeks?
That was war. During the last week, until we have liberated Higli on Friday and Saturday, we have been using all what is available in our hands to protect our territory, including the aerial bombardment on the attacking forces or the fleeing forces. If there is a collateral damage, it is regrettable, but it is inevitable, because sometimes the forces take refuge on the villages that is neighboring our borders.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there some more questions?
Peter Tesh, amongst other from the Sudan Studies Society of the UK. I had a question for William Bain, but I would like to leave it to the panel and maybe also Baroness Cox, because there's one elephant in the room which was not really mentioned. That's the US, and it seems to me that mixed messages have been misunderstood in Juba about the intentions of the US, and the US has also reneged on its promises to Khartoum to deal with the debt relief, etc. So the economic question of North Sudan has been left high and dry by the kind of cavalier attitude in Washington, which of course is in a election year, so Obama is not going to do anything which would be taken up by its Republican opponents to appeal or to honor its agreements, or the, not agreement, but the intentions they have expressed previously.
Okay, let's have a second question. I saw some hands over here on the right.
Thank you. My name is Elhad Paul, and I'm from South Sudan. I just want to ask a question to Dr. Mutrif. What it is that he has spoken about Sudan being in economical difficulties, and that is understandable given all the oil that has gone to the south. But there is one question that I want to ask. Why is it that the Sudan army is spending a lot of money on its military to oppress its own people? Because since 1956, Sudan has never been in war with any other neighboring country. The war has always been with its own people. Even now that they do recognize that they have shortages of resources, they're spending a lot of money on bombing civilians, using unnecessary force. If you are really serious and you want to solve the issue of all the Sudanese, I think it wouldn't be difficult to have a conference just like this now and bring everybody and accept that there is give and take. There are people who are Africans in Sudan, like the Nuba people and people from Blue Nile. You must acknowledge that and give them their rights as Africans in order to have a diverse society. You cannot insist on Arabism and trying to make Sudan as an Arab, which has led to South Sudan breaking away, and impose it on the other people. What you are doing is you are just trying to break Sudan further by continuing these wars.
Okay, thank you. Question here on the left.
Yasser Daoud, Nuba Mountains, human rights activist. My question here is very straight to Dr. Mutraf Sadiq. Why the government of Khartoum denying and refused the agreement, the frame agreement which signed in Addis Ababa between SPLM North and Sudan? And unfortunately, the president refused that agreement and addressing war from the mosque.
Okay, well, I think you, Dr. Mutrif, you've got three more tough questions. First of all, how do you feel about the US allegedly not honouring its debt relief promises? Secondly, why are you spending so much on arming the military, and why are you still insisting, as the questioner says, on Arabism, repressing the people of the South? And the third question on the Nuba Mountains.
SPLM North. Last questions on the SPLM North government of Sudan.
No, framework agreement.
The first question is directed to Mr. Payne.
Okay, the world has actually promised the two parties when they signed the CPA to support them for the implementation of the agreement and for the peace dividend. One of the challenges that Sudan is facing is the issue of debt, as you all know. And Sudan is heavily indebted. But for political reasons, Sudan has not enjoyed the HIPIC initiative because some of the international actors are not yet for this issue. Lastly, the issue had moved a bit when we had the joint technical assessment from the World Bank and IMF, and we had a sort of roadmap that has certain requirements, including the IPRSP that had been already approved, and the track record for our economy, and so on. We hope that if things went well, Sudan is supposed to enjoy what had other countries enjoyed from the initiatives of the HIPIC. And there are some other bilateral, debtors for Sudan who has to take certain steps. We thank some of the countries who actually committed to what they have offered before, like Norway and Japan, who actually started the process of writing the Sudanese debt. Still, most of the European countries and the United States and other countries have not yet taken a very serious step towards relieving the debt of Sudan. So here we call upon the international community to honor the commitment and to support the issue of debt relief in Sudan. And as you know, the two parties has agreed on what we call the zero option. The Sudanese government has taken all the liabilities, including the debt, with the agreement that the two parties, Sudan and Southern Sudan, will work together to call for what we call the zero option. And it had been agreed, and one of the issues that had been accepted by the two parties under the AUHIP, and we hope that the world will support the Sudanese government and South Sudan also by this issue of the zero option. Otherwise, we may return to the other option, that's the apportionment of the debt between the two states. With regard to what had been said by Taha about the Arabism and Africanism and something like that, Sudan is Sudan. We have a constitution called our country Sudan. We have recognized the Arabic language as lingua franca, including South Sudan itself, and we have recognized all dialects and language in Sudan as national languages. If he didn't know that, he has to refer to our constitution. So we don't have something in relation to Arabs or Africans or something like that. We accepted that Sudan, with all its components, is the Sudan of today and the Sudan of the future. With regard to what he has said in utilizing the budget mainly to support the security and the army, it's true that when you have a challenge, you have to, security is a priority. We don't deny that we are not spending money on security. It is a requirement for each government. But Sudan is one of the few countries that is scoring progress on the other development fields. Just don't refer to me. We are building dams, we are constructing roads, we are expanding the agriculture, and we are trying to implement a sort of a balanced approach towards utilizing our resources. Even at the time when we are facing pressure on the security, we have not deviated from our policy towards a balanced development and a balanced utilization of our budget. With regard to the last question, the framework agreement, I think he's meaning the framework agreement that had been signed in Addis Ababa by Dr. Nafi and Malik Agar. There is misinterpretation on the position of our government. The government, it's true that they have criticized the agreement from certain circles in our country. But we refer to the last resolution with regard to this framework agreement. We thought our government, this is the last position of the government prior to the eruption of war in southern Kordofan and Blue Nile, that we accept all what had been agreed on the security component, including the mediation of the AU-HIP. But with regard to the political component of the agreement, we said that we don't need a third party. We have to interact directly between our brothers in southern Kordofan and Blue Nile and the political leadership in our country. We don't need mediation. But no one had rejected the content of the framework agreement that had been signed by Dr. Nafi and Malik Agar. But our brothers opted to go for war rather than to go on the track of the peaceful resolution of the conflict between them and the central government.
Thank you. Question here in the front row.
Hello, this is Olivia Warren from Waging Peace. Thank you for your comments. I'd like to say a thank you to William Bain for mentioning East Sudan, which often does go unnoticed. What I would like to know from Dr. Mutrif is, rather than constantly focusing on the problems with South Sudan and often blaming the South Sudan for problems in the north, I'd like Dr. Mutrif to explain whether progress is being made, political progress on bringing in the dissatisfied parties that are now from the east, from Darfur, from Blue Nile, from South Kordofan, and in Khartoum itself, where many signs of rebellion have been put down very brutally. What political power-sharing strategies are in place in Sudan itself to address the problems that you are seeing within your own territory?
I've got two questions that have come in by email, or Twitter in one case. Let me just read them out to you. Agul Lual Deng asks why are there no referenda for the three disputed areas, and what about the Abyei Protocol? And Stephen James, an independent analyst working on Sudan for 20 years or more, asks about the issue of peripheral people, marginalized people, saying that conflicts in many countries are often centered on the marginalization by the central government of the people who are in the peripheries. In the Sudanese case, the Fur, the Nuba, the Funj, the Belgan, the Misseria, other nomadic pastoralists. And he says, while the wider public of Sudan have always embraced tolerance, justice, egalitarianism and compassion, it seems that the government in Khartoum continues to ignore both the dangers of such marginalization while also trampling on the core values of the people that it claims to represent. Isn't it time to recognize that there has to be a radical change in government of Sudan policy that reverses this trend and starts to allow a truly pluralistic, democratic and just country that can regain international status? That's a long question. So there we are. 3 questions, please.
Okay, I think the first and this last question are interlinked, if I understand what had been said well. As you know, Sudan has a constitution. For the first time in history, Sudan has accepted the federal rule and the direct election of the state authorities. This was not happening before. Usually the regions or the provinces or the states were subject to maybe before the will of the center or what we call the political consensus. But now we have surrendered this attitude to the choice of the people. The people should choose whom they want to choose as a governor or as the state representative, as the state legislature, or even as the national legislature. I don't think that any of the third world countries is enjoying as a formula for sharing better than what we are adopting in Sudan. And still Sudan is open for any perfect model that we see suitable for our case, because we cannot say that what is applicable to the United States is necessarily, or UK, is necessarily applicable to Sudan. We are developing our own formula. We are consulting our own people with regard to what is suitable for them. So the choice is a choice of the people. No one is now forced to accept an appointed governor or a minister or a state legislator from the center. So this is our formula, and we are adopting this formula strictly. For these issues, with regard to the East and Darfur and even the 2 areas, we are having agreements. And we are committing to what we have agreed to. Now we have listened to what Dr. Tijani Sisi has said with regard to Darfur. And this is the formula that has been accepted for the time being. We don't say that what is accepted today is a perfect option. It is it's not a rigid or a jacket that we have to put ourselves in. We have to develop our models. It applies for Eastern Sudan. We had an agreement that had been signed in Asmara, you all know, and all those who had signed are part of our government now. We are having Eastern Sudan Development Fund that is doing fine at the ground. And we hope that Darfur will enjoy the same support that had been enjoyed by Eastern Sudan. We are having a master plan for development in Eastern Sudan under the umbrella of the Southern Eastern Sudan Peace Agreement, and we are implementing step by step what had been accepted, and we can't say that there is an absolute prosperity in Eastern Sudan, but there is a progress towards achieving what had been accepted and agreed in Eastern Sudan peace agreement. But what had happened in the two areas, in the Rumba Mountains and Southern Kordofan and Blue Nile, is unfortunate, because this is a deviation from the course of the protocol with regard to that two areas. As you know, we have implemented the protocol in a proper manner, with the exception of the security component of that protocol, until we reach the moment for electing the governors and the state legislatures and the authorities of the two states. In one state it was accepted, although it was taken by Malik Agar, the SPLA. We have accepted the result. When it was a turn of the Southern Kordofan, you know what had happened, and Abdulaziz has rejected the results, and instead of opting for the legal course of protest, he opted for an armed revolt, and this obstructed the process of the popular consultation that will express the ideas of the people with regard to the implementation of the protocol on that two areas. So we had honored our commitment. This is the agreement, regardless if it is good or not, but this is a compromise that had been reached through the peace process with regard to the two areas, or with regard to Eastern Sudan, or with regard to Darfur. Thank you.
Yes, a question over here at the right.
Hi, my name is Benedetta D'Alessi from SOAS. I have two very quick questions to Dr. Mutrif. I was part of the Assessment and Evaluation Commission. I was a bit surprised to hear that the two parties agreed that there are 4 contested areas along the border. When we closed the commission on 9th of July, parties had not found any agreement on the contested areas. And that's because one of the contested areas was Iglige, and the parties could not agree on that point. So the report that was submitted by the Commission to define the border was a recommendation to the Presidency and indicated 5 areas, including Iglige. That's our perception of the situation. So I wanted to ask when that agreement had been signed on 4 disputed areas, and what are the 4 disputed areas in that report, which was not made public. The second point is the situation, the humanitarian situation in Blue Nile. It's a bit unfair to make comparison between Southern Kordofan and Blue Nile, but Dr. Mutrif said the situation is better in Blue Nile. It's difficult to say, but I would say the situation in Blue Nile is as bad as the situation in Southern Kordofan in terms of humanitarian, the humanitarian situation for the people. An assessment has just been conducted in the 2 localities of Southern Blue Nile, Kurmuk and Bao, and part of Atadamun locality, which are hit by the war, like during the Second Civil War. And the report indicates that 120,000 IDPs are living there, and the farming season is lost. Probably when you were referring to that the farming season has not been is not lost, you were referring to the northern localities that are not under a war situation. And so I wanted to raise the attention also of the public on the situation in Blue Nile, that is sometimes the underdog and not that much considered, but a report will be made public in few days on the situation, the last assessment on the situation, humanitarian situation on Kurmuk and Bao localities. That is very bad. Thanks.
Okay, the lady here, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Angel Hanan Samuel Abjon. My mother from the Sudan and my father from South Sudan. So basically, I'm just here on behalf of the women and children, as we all said. And you can see the tension and conflict in Sudan. So it's always the women and the children who are suffering. So I'm just here on behalf of their voice. So basically, I thank the international who trying to help us. So please, it's not a question. I just would like, to help us to get peace in all Sudan, South Sudan, and North Sudan, and the West and the East, and I would be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Mutrif, if you could answer the question with two parts about the 4 contested areas. When was this agreement signed? And then the Blue Nile issue saying that it's just as bad as South Kordofan.
Yeah, I don't want to mention the areas, but the agreed contested areas, which is not necessarily we concede that it's part of the South, but it is few areas. One in southern Darfur, around Kafia Ginji. This is one of the areas that the South claimed more land in southern Darfur state. Not Hufrat al-Nihas, as the ambassador said. The other area is area called Kaka, which was part of northern Sudan, and now it lies in it is controlled by South Sudan. The other area is called Jod al-Fakhar in Upper Nile. We have a disputed area of 4 kilometers or something like that. And the fourth area that is called Meganis, whether the borders start at the tip of the of Jabal al-Meganis or at the southern part of Jabal al-Meganis. This is the 4 disputed areas that had been accepted and signed by the 2 technical groups in So the rest had been delimited in the map, and we have instructed the Demarcation Commission to start putting the marks on the ground. But because of the new claims and the security situation and the reluctance on the side of the South, the process had not started. So this is the 4 disputed areas with regard to borders and South. With regard, I don't want to repeat the story of the humanitarian to the 2 areas, but we recognize that there is, regardless of the magnitude of that problem, there is a problem. Even if there is one civilian or Sudanese affected, we have to rescue him and we have to support him until we get back to normality. So it is not a matter of dispute of the magnitude. It is a matter of principle that we need to address through a process that will preserve our rights and pinpoint the reach of the support to the needy people, but not to rebel groups that will utilize the food as a weapon towards the civilians or towards against the government. We do accept the call for peace that had been said by our sister, and we are working hard to that end. We have accepted the whole process of the exercise of self-determination, and we have accepted the result. So we cannot fight on minor things. And our advice to our brothers in the South, they have many challenges to address. Uniting the Southerners by new claims towards the North is not the right option. We have the challenge of building a nation. We have the challenge of providing basic services to our people and brothers in South Sudan. So let us both reserve our resources, human or material, towards building our nations rather than destroying our 2 entities and our 2 countries. So I do accept your call, and we hope that we both work for that one end, because we need to clap or to tango, as we used to say. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We're coming close to the end of the time, and I do want to give the three panelists, including Sarah Pantuliano here in London, a chance to make some final observations. Particularly, let's look to the future now. We've heard a good deal about what's happening on the ground and what has happened and who's to blame and so on. But let's now turn to the future. What are the next steps if we're going to try and avoid war? Sarah.
Thanks, Jonathan. I think we need to go back to the negotiating table, sooner rather than later. The more we let things fester, the more difficult it's going to be, to take concrete steps towards achieving a negotiated solution on all the outstanding issues. I said before that I only wanted to comment on humanitarian issues, but the reality is that there is no humanitarian solution to humanitarian issues. The solution is always political. And I think it's important that we go back to identify what the political solutions are to the problem and how we can get there. And I was just reflecting on the fact that when the IGAD negotiations restarted in Kenya in 2002, very few people thought they could end up where they did with the CPA in 2005. And it was really, down to the political courage, I would say, of leaders both, in the government of Sudan and the SPLM, that the negotiations ended where they did, with the support of the international community. And of course, Dr. Mutrif was one of the leaders of the negotiations for the government. And I think, I sort of appeal to you and the other members from that group that led the two parties to a negotiated solution in 2005, to continue to find that courage to push your respective governments to go back to the negotiating table. Whether AU-HIP is the right body, the right track to achieve this solution, I don't know, but it's important that you continue to push to go back to the dialogue that it's necessary for both your countries to achieve stability economically, politically, in any respect. And I hope that you are able soon to take up your ambassadorial post in Juba, because that will be, a sign that the relations between the two countries will finally start again on a more positive track.
Well, thank you, Sarah. And can we now please come to the two Sudanese government panelists? We've left it very little time to talk about really a crucial issue, but how we go forward. President Omar al-Bashir has said that there's nothing to negotiate anymore about with the South. It sounds as though the door is being slammed. Can I just ask Dr. Tijani first and then Dr. Mutrif to tell us, is the door really closed? What steps is his government or their governments willing to take, or what do you expect from the South Sudanese government? Dr. Tijani first,
thank
please.
you very much. Thank you very much. I can understand that, the conflict between the North and the South has captured the regional and international attention. So most of the discussions have been on this. But to say the truth, I think I do agree with Sarah on the issue of returning back to the negotiating table. And I think the Sudanese government has already recognized that. I think last night I heard the Minister of Foreign Affairs saying that the Sudan has no objection to go back to the negotiating table. And that is absolutely necessary that the two countries should start negotiations with addressing this issue of security, because that has been triggering the conflicts between the North and the South. If the issue of the security has not been addressed, then I'm afraid even if negotiations started, then they will go back to square one. It's absolutely important at this particular time. That now that we have seen what has actually happened in Hijlit and the implications beyond the occupation of Hijlit, it is absolutely important that when these two parties go back to the negotiating table, the crucial issue that has to be addressed upfront is the issue of security. How could the North and the South make sure that there are no incursions northward or southward from each group? That should be the main issue, because if that is not addressed, I'm afraid this will continue to become a very hot spot over the next few years. And what I have just seen from our government in the Sudan here, the government is willing to go back to the negotiating table to address all these issues of concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Dr. Mutrif, please.
Thank you so much. I fully agree with what had been said by my colleagues Sarah and Tigani, that there is no resolution for a conflict without negotiation. So we do accept that we have to resolve the peaceful means and dialogue to resolve our conflicts. And it is resolvable, I think. But it needs the will and the unification of position. Because we see that there is a split on the fronts that some call for war, others are calling for wisdom and something like that. But I think the statement that you have quoted is out of anger. If you witness what had happened in Higli, the deliberate destruction, the stab on the back from the same people whom we have supported to be independent, it is really shocking. And such a statement is out of that moment, is out of reach of what had been seen in the ground by those who had traveled there, and they have saw the deliberate act under the instruction of one of the leaders of the South, who instructed them to set a place and to destroy these facilities. That also serves both the North and South. The South is inflicting harm on itself by destroying Higli, because Higli is a CPF that serves both North and South Sudan oil industry. So I do believe that at a reasonable time we have to go back to negotiations to resolve the issue. And the utmost and the most important issue and the urgent issue is the issue of security. We have to put a procedure to implement what we had agreed in the 10th of February within the agreement on non-aggression between North and South. We have to set or agree on practical steps by the urging to implement what we have agreed. And then I'm quite sure that the door will be open for resolving the remainder of the issues.
Well, thank you very much. It only remains for me then to thank everybody here for coming. Thank you, the people who've been sending in questions online and following it online and on Twitter, and particularly to thank our panelists, Sarah Pantuliano in London, and for the very remarkable, honest and clear presentations by the two representatives of the government of Sudan. I think we should give them a round of applause for thanking.